bright colors, nature, futuristic tech, gloss. These are all terms that have become synonymous with Frutiger Aero. This was the design aesthetic that was prevalent throughout the 2000s and early 2010s in tech and mainstream media. Now, there are tons of videos out there explaining what Frutiger Aero is, but not many people know about its, shall I say, evil twin? I'm of course referring to Dark Aero. This is an aesthetic that's rather shrouded in obscurity and darkness, pun intended. Hey, what's up guys, TechVid here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the rather obscure aesthetic of Dark Aero. Let's get into it right after the intro. Dark Aero is much less focused on nature and rather focuses on futuristic modern tech. Well, futuristic by late 2000s standards. You know what that means. Dark, shiny tech that looks like something a teen from the 2000s would have been crazy obsessed over. Let's take a look at some famous examples of Dark Aero. Firstly, Alienware. Their whole brand identity in the late 2000s was based around Dark Aero. From their website, which looked like this, to their laptops like the M51X, Alienware used a ton, and I mean a ton, of Dark Aero. They were kind of like the Dark Aero overlords, kind of like how people see Nintendo as the Frutiger Aero overlord. However, they weren't the only ones, because PlayStation was having its go with Dark Aero too. The PS3 really highlights Dark Aero through its design and UI. The console itself had a sleek, glossy black finish, and the cross-media bar UI had a lot of dark and glossy elements which added on to this. Another Sony console would be the PS Vita, which had quite a lot of elements of Dark Aero in it, from the rather muted bluish purple color palette to the UI to the glossy black glass and metal design of the actual console. You could also maybe say that the Sony PlayStation phone was also Dark Aero, along with some of the earlier Sony Xperia phones, but that's just my take on this. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Another console that exemplified Dark Aero was the black Wii U, as it also had a glossy black finish. Many video games also featured Dark Aero in them. The most famous example would be Angry Birds Space from 2012. The whole game was just a Dark Aero masterpiece. Another famous example is the Portal series, which had quite a lot of Dark Aero throughout, from the level design to the actual portals that you jump through. However, Dark Aero in gaming was mainly seen in a lot of racing games. The video game Need for Speed Carbon had quite a lot of Dark Aero design, from the cityscape to the menus. Similarly, the 2010 game Blur also had quite a lot of Dark Aero. Another racing game with Dark Aero design was the Asphalt game series, from Asphalt 1 to Asphalt 7, which had a ton of Dark Aero inspired menu design and music. Speaking of music, did you know that Dark Aero is also a musical aesthetic? That's right, the aesthetic also has music associated with it. Key examples include Boom Boom Pow by the Black Eyed Peas, or you know what, scratch that. Half of the Black Eyed Peas' discography from the 2000s could be categorized as Dark Aero, along with Xenogenesis by the Fat Rat, Trinity by 009 Sound System, and a lot of Deadmau5 music. Dark Aero could also be seen in a few movies from that time. These include Tron Legacy, WALL-E, and Cars 2. These were all movies that centered around futuristic high-tech worlds, which makes sense as to why they would choose to use Dark Aero for the aesthetic of them. Dark Aero was also quite prevalent in older BlackBerry phones, specifically those running BBOS 5 through 7 and BBOS 10, which honestly really fit the design of those phones because they also had darkened color designs that featured a lot of gloss and metal. Another phone with a Dark Aero themed OS would be the Android phones running Android Gingerbread, Honeycomb, Ice Cream Sandwich, Jelly Bean, or Kit Kat. These Android versions featured quite a lot of Dark Aero theming to them due to the hollow UI scheme that Google was using at the time. The final example of Dark Aero I have for you is Windows Longhorn. That's right, the lost version of Windows. Windows Longhorn had quite a bit of Dark Aero design to it, especially in the builds following 4044, which is when they started shifting away from the blue, more plasticky Windows XP style designs to the more black and dark muted color palette with glossier textures. As we can see throughout all of these examples, Dark Aero tends to have a few key elements, those being black, blue, and a muted metallic color palette, sleek shapes, matte, carbon fiber, brushed metal, or glass finishes and textures, as well as shadows and reflections. However, apart from these examples, Dark Aero wasn't seen very much. But why was that? Well, it has to do with what it was competing with. You see, Dark Aero had a much more niche audience, as it was more targeted towards high-end tech for businesses and gamers. Frutiger Aero, on the other hand, was a much broader aesthetic that encompassed the majority of consumer electronics. To put that into perspective, this is like comparing the sales of the PS3 and the Wii. The Wii was a completely Frutiger Aero focused console and had much higher sales, whereas the PS3 had fewer sales and was a mix of Frutiger Aero and Dark Aero themes. Another comparison could be the sale of BlackBerry phones of the time compared to iPhones and Samsungs. There's a major difference, as we can see. This also explains why Dark Aero saw its decline a bit earlier than Frutiger Aero did, leading it to become rather obscure and shrouded in mystery. Nowadays, Dark Aero has begun to see a slight resurgence in popularity, similar to other aesthetics from the 2010s, like Frutiger Aero and Frutiger Metro. Many people on TikTok, Insta, and Pinterest have been sharing their Dark Aero compilations and setups, which is what inspired me to make this video. But what do you think? Do you remember seeing Dark Aero around? Do you have any favorite tech products that fall under the Dark Aero aesthetic? I'd love to know. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and stay safe. Bye! Like Frutiger Aero and Dark Metro. Dark Metro